All right, welcome back. All right, today we're going to talk about knife sharpening and my top pick here for a knife sharpener. I've gone through quite a bit of knife sharpeners here on the homestead, and I think probably the last, I've been using a stone primarily, or different sharpening stones. I guess maybe about probably about 3 months ago, maybe 3-4 months ago, I bought this, and decided to, give it a shot. This was recommended to me, and this comes in several editions. So, what was highly recommended was to get the WorkSharp. Well, it's called the WorkSharp, but WorkSharp. But what was highly recommended was to get the Ken Onion Edition. It has a more powerful motor and I believe wider belt and just a few more bells and whistles. And really when you use it, it's from this angle, from this side, that you actually use it. You basically have to actually, it's an electric sharpener. And because it is a belt sharpener, it gives you what's called a convex edge, which is pretty cool. So what I was, the way it works is you go through a series of belts, and these are actually belts for something else. But you go through a series of belts just as you would with a stone to go from coarse to medium to, fine grit. So, including, this is kind of an extra that I bought, but a leather strop, right? So you can actually do some stropping with this as well. It adjusts in different angles just by, this is also how you take this on and off, because you can put different attachments on here as well. So this is a really nice knife sharpener, and it's pretty quick, meaning the biggest thing is that you can sharpen a lot of knives in a very short period of time with this. And a friend of mine that actually does knife sharpening professionally uses one of these. This is, something he does. He goes to gun shows and typically sets up a table and, does, sharpening for people right there at the show. And this is definitely in his toolbox. And the last time I saw him, this was pretty much all that was sitting out that he was using. So it's a really nice sharpener. And what is really cool about it, and of course you can change the angle. You set the angle basically here. And you can also lock the motor if you want, but you really don't want to lock the motor while you're using it. And the reason being is because you actually, when you are using this, you definitely, you stop as you pull the knife through. You stop before the knife leaves the, I hope I didn't, do too much damage there. You stop before the knife leaves the belt, right? So you never want to actually run your knife all the way through, because then you risk rounding your edge. So you just make sure that you never let the knife leave while the belt is moving. So you definitely lift your finger off, let it stop, and then you pull it back through. So you have to have some patience, and ultimately you have to really already know how to sharpen a knife. What is highly recommended is you start off with some cheap knives. So take some knives that you don't care about, and you learn how to do it, because you can definitely remove some metal during this process before you actually learn how to do it. But once you do, it's definitely a time saver, and it's an awesome tool, and it's very well made. I would say this is very well made. It's nothing that is cheap or poorly put together. It's very well made. There's also attachments that you can get, and this is one right here. And honestly, the reason why I got it, and with this attachment, allows you to use larger belts, and ultimately works as a grinder attachment as well. The reason why I got the attachment is because I assumed that I couldn't use this with some of my larger knives. But here is, this knife is 1/4 of an inch thick, and don't have any problems with it in here. And I completely sharpened this knife in this knife sharpener. as well as this. This is a Bussey Hog 8, and it's a pretty big knife as far as thickness. So just to give you a rough idea, that, you know, let me make sure I zero that. That wasn't zeroed very well at all, because I know it's thicker than that. Yeah, there we go. It's a little bit more realistic. So this is a fairly thick knife, and hopefully you can see this. And I have no problems, as you see, putting a mirror edge, if you can see, and hopefully that's visible, how shiny of an edge that is on there, without with just this attachment. So I haven't had to use this, meaning, you know, I've used it, but I seem to be just fine with this, with even my largest knives. So I highly recommend it for that reason. But with the attachments, and even without, I would imagine that you can, especially with the different angles and different ways that you can turn this, that you probably wouldn't have a very tough time doing things like axe handles and things, or say axe handles, axes and things of that nature. So I'm going to give that a shot as well. But at least with my knives, I can tell you that it is done a wonderful job, and it doesn't really matter how big it is. With my smaller knives, with my larger knives, it puts a mirror edge there. The big thing to remember, like I said, is, you know, of course, you're going through several different grits with your belts, but the major thing to remember is, as you pull through, and you're pulling through at about a rate of 1 inch per second, and as you pull through, let off the gas right as you get there. And of course, with like this is a recurve, right? So as long as you have a curve like this in the blade, you want to make sure that you follow the contour of that curve as you come through. But, you know, and as you see, once you get, you know, fairly decent at it, one thing that I do have issues with, and I think this is just me, because you go through one side and this is the other. What I have issues with is I always seem to get one side, and I guess it's probably would be more visible on a knife with this coating, that I tend to overdo one side more so than the other. So that's just something that I just have to keep improvement on as far as consistency goes. But it puts a heck of an edge on your knife. And it does it in very short order. And most of the blades that I use most of the time hold an edge very well. So it's not that often that I have to do it, or I can just bring the edge back with some stropping and all of that once I get that mirrored edge. So that's the Ken Onion edition of the WorkSharp knife sharpener. Highly recommended. Is an awesome tool. I bought this on Amazon, I believe, and forgive me for not having a price offhand, but just look them up. And if you get them, like I said, there are several. WorkSharp has several versions. I would most definitely get the Ken Onion edition, because it has a beefier motor and some other features, but definitely the beefier motor. And these are very well made. Should last, you know, a lifetime. Very well made. And, you know, if, you know, there's also, at some point as I get better with this, or if I find more use for this, I'll give a bit of a review of that as well. But ultimately, I prefer, I guess the main issue with this is that you have to, ultimately, it's just like using your knife on a typical, you know, grinder. So if you're not good at holding that angle, you're going to have issues. So this is a little bit more of a no-brainer, and honestly takes a little less skill than once you put the attachment on, you're still using your hand as a guide to hold that angle. So, all right, that's about it. You guys have a good one.